Hello and welcome to another episode of Boat in the Bonnet. My name is Frans and I'm building an Iain Oughtred Guillemot traditional dinghy. This episode shows you how the 4 strakes are constructed and installed, one on either side of the hull. During the construction an unexpected event occurred. More about that later on. The construction of the strakes started with making the plank length at the preceding strakes. The width of the plank length was marked. And the plank edges were beveled using plane and chisel. A small template was used to indicate the desired bevel angle. During the process I noticed I almost made a mistake. The bevel angle was not measured between the plank length and the first batten, but between it and the next batten. So I shortened the template to prevent it to reach the second batten. Then I went on beveling the plank length. Next, the molds had to be flattened, so the template plank would be laid fair and without distortion on top of the molds. Pointed strips of ply were glued to the template plank, indicating the outer edges of the strake to be made. Having done this, the station mold locations were marked at the template. Having no place in my garage to handle plywood sheets of 2.5 by 1.24 meters, sewing was done outside. The first plank brought inside was soon followed by the rest of the timber. Weather conditions had changed. Next day the rain had cleared and the template was laid upon the plywood sheet to determine the angle at which the sheet had to be positioned to one another. Having marked the angle and positions, the bevel for the scarf joint could be made. Because rain was forecasted again, I found me a way to glue the plywood inside the garage. A day later, the sheets were clamped and the epoxy left over in the cup proved to have cured well. The template info then was copied onto one of the combined sheets. Battens, not needed anymore, were removed from the molds, like the nails which had stayed behind. Mold parts that had been covered by the battens then were flattened. The strake was rough sawn by hand. Clearly, Jack the cat was woken up by the sound and decided it was time to inspect the goldfishes in our pond. For me, it was time to plane the edges of the strake. Then, suddenly, the weight of the strake lessened. The strake had broken at the scarf joint. The epoxy glued surfaces were undamaged, but clearly there had been a weak spot in the ply itself. The first restoration of a boat lay ahead. I decided to replace 30 centimeters of strake length by a new sheet of ply. First, the broken parts were laid against one another and in line on the new sheet. Then 10 centimeters of the broken strakes were removed, keeping in mind the extra length needed to make a new scarf joint. scarves then were made. A layer of clear epoxy was applied. Followed by a layer of thickened epoxy. Then all parts were put in position, making sure they were all in line.
Radio 10. Vandaag is de dag 1 man die geen dag in zijn leven heeft gewerkt. Vandaag is de dag wat je maar eens wetenschap geeft van onze familiebedrag. Nog is plus en school die er ingesproken staat. Oké, dat moet de directeur niet worden. Staat voor de investering van zijn leven. Jij ziet aan de
And clamped together.
Even snel, want bij Odido hebben we nu een afteller. Een tijdelijke supervoordelige deal met de Samsung Galaxy S25. En krijg je Galaxy Watch 7 cadeau ter waarde van €369. Pak deze deal snel voordat het jaar afloopt. Ga naar odido.nl of kom langs in de Odido shop. Tot zo! In het ingekocht van extreem lage prijs. Onder van halve nu voor 69 cent. Activeer in de Pharma-app en profiteer meteen.
The next day, the strake was unclamped . Cut. explained. Cut. And dry fitted. The parts proved to be lined up correctly, so excess epoxy was removed. The game was next to being cut. The strake was offered up a few times, in between small changes were made. Finally, a full dry fit was done. The completed strake then was used to create a copy. Before gluing the strakes in place, all molds were covered with tape, so the strakes would not get glued to the molds.
Je wacht op het juiste moment.
Also, tape was applied to the strakes already in place
Als je het voelt. De bak. Training.
and buttons to be placed. This to make cleaning up excess epoxy easier later on.
12 maanden voor maar €30 per maand. En aansluiten doe je helemaal gratis. Kijk voor alle voorwaarden op odido.nl of kom langs in de Odido-shop. Tot zo!
Jackpot is de loterij met de hoogste jackpot van Nederland. Tot wel 120 miljoen. Ja, kun je altijd al het gewild. Dinsdag en vrijdag mee met Eurojackpot. Ga snel naar de winkel of naar eurojackpot.nl. Eurojackpot is een spel van de Nederlandse loterij. Speelbewust 18+. Martijn Koopman. Zometeen een prachtig liedje van Carly Simon. Maar hier Simply Red. Dit is Something Got Me Started.
Like done before, first a layer of clear epoxy was applied. followed by a layer of thickened epoxy. Then the strake was put in place and clamped. Bronze nails were hammered in at the transom end of the strake. And at the bow side. The same procedure was followed to install the port side strake. After installing, excess epoxy was removed. One day later, the epoxy had cured and the clamps were removed. had to be done then was to remove excess parts at the front and the transom side of the strakes. I'm halfway now making and installing the strakes. So for now, thank you for watching and see you next time.